It was a bright and busy morning at JFK Airport as travelers hurried through the terminal, pulling suitcases and clutching boarding passes. Gate 32A was bustling with passengers waiting to board Flight 712, a direct flight to Los Angeles. Among the passengers was a group of friends, their loud laughter and chatter cutting through the hum of the terminal. They noticed a tall black man walking through the gate area, dressed sharply in a pilot's uniform, with gold stripes on his sleeves and a matching cap. "Check this guy out," one of them whispered, elbowing the others. The man in question, Captain Michael Davis, walked with calm confidence as he made his way to the counter to check in with the gate agent. "You think he's actually a pilot?" one of the friends said, snickering. "Maybe it's a costume," another joked. "Halloween came early this year." The group burst into laughter, their voices carrying across the gate. Other passengers turned to look, some joining in with amused smiles. Michael glanced in their direction but kept his composure. He had heard it all before. The jokes, the snide remarks, the doubting glances. It wasn't new, but it still stung. As he approached the counter, the gate agent greeted him warmly. "Good morning, Captain Davis. Everything is ready for you. The flight crew is already on board." "Thank you," Michael said with a polite nod, handing over his ID. The group of friends watched, still chuckling. "Maybe he's just pretending so he can get free coffee," one of them quipped. Michael adjusted his cap, thanked the gate agent, and headed toward the jet bridge. He could still hear their laughter as he walked away, but he didn't let it faze him. He had a job to do, and it was one he excelled at. Once on board, Michael greeted his co-pilot and cabin crew, running through the pre-flight checklist with the same precision and professionalism that had earned him his captain's wings. He had spent years honing his craft, and no amount of ignorance from a few passengers could diminish that. "Ready for a smooth flight today?" his co-pilot asked. Michael smiled. "Always." Meanwhile, the passengers began boarding the plane. The group of friends noticed Michael in the cockpit as they walked past. "Wait, is he?" one of them started, trailing off as the realization hit. The cabin grew quieter as passengers took their seats, and whispers of confusion and disbelief spread through the rows. "Is he flying the plane?" someone murmured. Michael's calm voice came over the intercom. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Davis speaking. Welcome aboard Flight 712 to Los Angeles. We'll be taking off shortly, so please fasten your seatbelts and prepare for departure. Thank you for choosing us today, and I look forward to a great flight." The cabin fell silent. As the plane prepared for departure, the once chatty cabin was now unusually quiet. The group of friends who had laughed at Michael earlier sat in stunned silence, exchanging uneasy glances. "Did he just say, Captain Davis?" one of them whispered. "Yeah," another replied, his voice low. "That's the guy we saw at the gate." The realization settled over them like a heavy cloud. The man they had mocked wasn't wearing a costume or pretending to be someone he wasn't. He was the pilot in command of their flight. Meanwhile, Michael and his co-pilot completed their final checks in the cockpit. As the plane taxied to the runway, Michael's years of experience shone through in every action. His hands moved deftly over the controls, and his voice remained calm and measured as he communicated with air traffic control. Back in the cabin, a nervous passenger leaned over to the flight attendant. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Is the captain really, The flight attendant smiled knowingly. "Yes, Captain Davis is flying the plane. He's one of our most experienced pilots, and you're in excellent hands." The passenger nodded, her nervousness replaced with a hint of embarrassment. As the plane lifted off the runway, passengers gazed out the windows, the vast city below shrinking into a patchwork of streets and buildings. Michael's smooth takeoff impressed even the most seasoned travelers, and a sense of ease returned to the cabin. The group of friends sat quietly, their earlier arrogance now replaced with a mix of awkwardness and humility. "You know," one of them said softly, "we kind of look like jerks now." "Yeah," another admitted. "We shouldn't have said all that stuff. He's clearly the real deal." One of the women in the group nodded. "And he didn't even say anything back. He just did his job." As the flight reached cruising altitude, Michael's voice came over the intercom again. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. The weather looks clear for the majority of our flight, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey. Thank you. As Flight 712 continued its smooth journey toward Los Angeles, the group of friends who had mocked Michael earlier couldn't shake their discomfort. The realization that their assumptions had been so profoundly wrong lingered heavily in the air between them. One of the women, Megan, finally broke the silence. "We should apologize." The others glanced at her, surprised. "Apologize?" One of the men, Greg, asked hesitantly. "What are we even supposed to say? Sorry for being jerks? He's not going to care." "He might not," Megan admitted, "but that doesn't mean we shouldn't say something. It's the least we can do." The group mulled over her words, eventually nodding in agreement. As the flight approached its final hour, passengers began preparing for landing, returning seats to upright positions, stowing carry-ons, and finishing their in-flight beverages. Michael's calm voice came over the intercom once again. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're beginning our descent into Los Angeles International Airport. The weather is clear, and we're expecting an on-time arrival. Please make sure your seatbelts are fastened and your tray tables are secured. Thank you for flying with us today." His announcement was met with quiet murmurs of relief and anticipation, but for the group of friends, it sparked a nervous energy. "This is our chance," Megan whispered. "We can catch him when we get off the plane." After the plane landed and taxied to the gate, passengers began gathering their belongings and preparing to disembark. The group lingered near their seats, letting the line of passengers thin out. Michael, having completed his post-flight checks, stepped out of the cockpit to thank the passengers as they exited. His commanding presence was met with polite nods and smiles from most travelers, many of whom now saw him in a new light. When the group reached the front of the plane, Megan stepped forward first, her expression earnest. "Captain Davis," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I just wanted to say thank you for the flight and to apologize. We judged you unfairly at the gate. It was wrong, and I'm sorry." Michael studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded, his voice calm and measured. "Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it." Greg stepped forward next, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. "Yeah, what she said. You're an incredible pilot, and we were way out of line. Sorry, man." Michael gave a small smile. "Apology accepted. I hope the flight was enjoyable for you." "It was," Greg said quickly. "More than we deserved." As the group exited, their faces reflected genuine humility. For the first time, they understood that respect isn't something to be given selectively, it's something owed to everyone. As the passengers filed out, Michael remained at the cockpit door, thanking each one for flying with them. When the last traveler stepped off, the cabin crew began their post-flight routine, tidying up and preparing for the next departure. Michael returned to the cockpit for a moment of quiet reflection. His professionalism had carried him through the day, but moments like the one with the group of passengers still lingered in his mind. Later, as Michael walked through the terminal toward the airline's lounge, he passed by the group of friends from earlier. They spotted him and offered small, sheepish waves. Michael gave a polite nod, choosing grace over lingering resentment. Megan, unable to help herself, turned to her friends once he had passed. "That guy's something else," she said. "I mean, he could have just ignored us or even snapped at us, and instead he carried himself like a total professional." Greg sighed. "We deserved worse, honestly. He's got more patience than I ever would." The group agreed, and as they made their way to baggage claim, they promised themselves they'd do better, starting with how they treated people in their day-to-day lives. For Michael, the flight was just another day in a career built on resilience, hard work, and an unwavering belief in his abilities. He had faced skepticism and judgment before, and he knew he would again. But every time he stepped into the cockpit, he proved, without needing to say a word, that he was exactly where he belonged. As he entered the airline lounge, a flight attendant who had worked the flight approached him. "Captain Davis," she said with a smile. I just wanted to say how inspiring it is to watch you handle situations like today. The way you carry yourself, it sets the tone for all of us." Michael returned the smile, his voice steady. "Thank you. I've learned that the best way to change people's minds is to lead by example. If I can do that, I'm doing my job." In the cockpit, Michael leaned back slightly, his professionalism unwavering. He had dealt with doubters and naysayers throughout his career, but he didn't let it shake him. His focus was always on doing his job to the best of his ability and proving without words that he belonged in the captain's seat. As Flight 712 cruised smoothly above the clouds, the cabin settled into a calm rhythm. Passengers relaxed with their books, headphones, and in-flight refreshments. Despite the serene atmosphere, an undercurrent of curiosity lingered among many of the travelers. In the row where the group of friends sat, the tension was palpable. They spoke in hushed tones, their earlier bravado replaced with sheepish acknowledgement. "I still can't believe he's the pilot," one of the men said. "Yeah," another chimed in, staring out the window. "We really messed up. He handled it way better than we deserved." One of the women sighed. "You know what's worse? We judged him without knowing anything about him. And now he's up there, literally flying this plane while we're sitting here feeling like idiots." Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Michael and his co-pilot discussed the flight plan, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed routine. "This flight's going smoother than expected," the co-pilot said, glancing at the instrument panel. Michael nodded. "The air traffic's been light today. Makes for an easier ride." The co-pilot hesitated before speaking again. "Hey, I overheard a little of what was happening at the gate earlier. You okay?" Michael smiled faintly, his hands steady on the controls. "It's nothing new. People make assumptions. It's part of the job sometimes." "Doesn't make it right," the co-pilot said firmly. Michael shrugged. "No, it doesn't. But I've learned that proving them wrong is the best way to handle it. Actions speak louder than words." Back in the cabin, the flight attendants moved through the aisles, offering drinks and snacks. One of the attendants, Sarah, overheard snippets of the group's conversation as she poured coffee. "I just feel bad now," one of the men said. "I mean, we laughed at him and he didn't even flinch. He's more professional than I'll ever be." Sarah decided to interject, her tone warm but pointed. "Captain Davis is one of the best pilots we have. He's logged thousands of flight hours and is known for his calm demeanor and expertise." The group looked up at her, their faces a mix of surprise and embarrassment. "Thanks for letting us know," one of the women said quietly. Sarah smiled politely and moved on, leaving the group to sit with their thoughts. As the flight continued, passengers couldn't help but feel a newfound respect for the man in the cockpit. Michael's professionalism and poise had turned skepticism into admiration, proving that skill and character far outweigh appearances. For the group of friends, the flight was a humbling experience, one they wouldn't forget anytime soon. The following day, a post went viral on social media. "Today I learned a lesson in humility. My friends and I made assumptions about someone we didn't know, and we were proven so wrong. Captain Davis, if you ever see this, thank you for teaching us that respect isn't just about titles, it's about character. You're a class act." The post gained hundreds of comments and shares, with many people praising Michael's grace and professionalism. For Michael, however, the recognition wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the quiet change he inspired, one passenger at a time. He didn't just fly planes. He broke barriers, challenged assumptions, and left a legacy of respect in his wake.